I agreed to the couples retreat because of a dare, not because I believed in the whole find yourself through meaningful connection thing, not because I was secretly hoping to meet the love of my life in a mountain lodge full of strangers holding hands, and definitely not because I thought it was a good idea. It started on a Friday night when my best friend Martin and I were sitting in our usual corner booth at Murphy's Bar, arguing over who had the worst dating history. "I've had 3 first dates this year," Martin said, taking a sip of his beer. 3. None of them even made it to date number 2. I laughed. "That's because you keep talking about fantasy football before appetizers arrive. That's called honesty." "No," I said. "That's called self-sabotage." He pointed at me. "And what's your excuse, Asher? You haven't been on a real date in, what? 8 months? 10. He nearly spit out his drink. 10? That's even worse. I shrugged, pretending it didn't bother me. The truth was, dating had become exhausting. Every app felt the same. Every conversation started with small talk and ended with someone disappearing. After enough disappointments, staying home with takeout and a movie started sounding a lot more appealing. Martin leaned back in the booth, grinning in the way that always meant trouble. So, I found something online. Whenever you start a sentence like that, my life gets worse. He ignored me and turned his phone around. The website read, Reconnect Weekend, a couples retreat for stronger relationships. There were photos of smiling couples hiking, cooking together, sitting around bonfires wrapped in blankets. I frowned. "Oh, why are you showing me this?" "Because," Martin said, trying not to laugh, "they accidentally allow single registrations." I blinked. "What?" "It says right here." He zoomed in. "Individuals attending without a partner may participate in all workshops." That has to be a mistake. Probably. So why would I go? His grin got even wider. "Because I dare you." I laughed immediately. "No. Come on. No. You always complain that nothing interesting ever happens to you." "I complain about work." "You complain about everything." "I do not." "You absolutely do." I folded my arms. "I'm not spending an entire weekend surrounded by happy couples. You'd survive. I'd be the only single person there. You don't know that. I'd be eating breakfast while everyone else feeds each other pancakes." Martin burst out laughing. "I'd become the unofficial mascot for loneliness." He was laughing so hard, people at the next table looked over. "You done?" I asked. "Almost." After another few seconds, he finally caught his breath. "I'll make it worth your while." "What does that mean?" "If you actually go," he paused dramatically, "I'll pay for the retreat." That caught my attention. "They're expensive." "I know." "You'd really pay?" He nodded. "But only if you actually stay the whole weekend." I narrowed my eyes. "What's the catch?" "I get updates." "Updates? Texts, photos, stories?" "So basically, you want entertainment." "I want to witness history." I shook my head. "You are unbelievable." "You haven't said no." I stared at the website again. It was ridiculous, completely ridiculous, which was probably why part of me was actually considering it. Maybe because life had become so predictable lately. Wake up, go to work, come home, order dinner, watch something, sleep, repeat. Maybe one embarrassing weekend wouldn't kill me. Martin held out his hand across the table. "So?" I sighed. "If I do this?" "You are?" I said if. "Then when it's over, you never bring it up again." He looked offended. "I make no such promises." "Martin?" "Fine. And you really pay." "I already have my credit card ready." I stared at him for another few seconds. Then, against every ounce of common sense I possessed, I shook his hand. "You're an idiot." I muttered. He practically shouted, "Yes!" People actually applauded from another table. I buried my face in my hands. I already regret this. 2 weeks later, I was driving into the mountains with a suitcase in my trunk and absolutely no idea what I was doing. The retreat was held at a beautiful lodge overlooking a lake about 3 hours outside the city. The closer I got, the prettier everything became. Tall pine trees, fresh mountain air, small wooden cabins scattered across the property. If I ignored the reason I was there, it honestly looked relaxing. Then I parked and immediately saw dozens of couples holding hands, laughing together, taking selfies. Fantastic. I checked my phone. "Martin, please tell me you're actually there." I sent him a picture of the entrance. "Asher, I hate you." His reply came instantly. I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. Inside the lobby, a cheerful woman wearing a retreat staff shirt greeted me. "Welcome. Name?" "Asher." She found my registration almost immediately. "Oh, wonderful." Something about her expression made me nervous. "We're so happy you came." "Thanks." She handed me a folder. "You're in cabin 4? I glanced around. "Just me?" She smiled. "We'll explain everything during orientation." That wasn't an answer. Before I could ask another question, another guest walked through the front doors carrying a duffel bag. Tall, broad shoulders, dark hair slightly messy from the drive. He looked around with the exact same confused expression I probably had. Our eyes met for a brief second. Then he looked away just as quickly. Interesting. He walked over to the registration desk. "Hi," he said. "I'm here for check-in." The receptionist smiled brightly. "Name?" he answered, but I couldn't quite hear it. A second later, her face lit up with the exact same expression she'd given me. "Oh, perfect." "Perfect?" She looked between him and me. Then she smiled even wider. Something told me I wasn't going to like whatever she was thinking. The guy finished signing the registration form before looking over at me again. This time he gave me a polite nod. I returned it. Nothing more. The receptionist clapped her hands together. "Perfect timing. Orientation starts in 5 minutes." She handed him a folder identical to mine. "Cabin 4. He frowned. "I'm sharing? We'll explain everything shortly." There it was again. Not an answer. He looked just as confused as I felt. About 20 people gathered in a large meeting room overlooking the lake, just like I'd expected. Couples everywhere. Some looked newly in love. Others looked like they'd been married for 20 years. Everyone seemed comfortable. Everyone except me. And apparently, the dark-haired guy. He stood near the back of the room with his hands in his pockets, looking like he was debating whether he could still turn around and leave. Honestly, same. A woman wearing a headset stepped to the front. "Welcome, everyone. My name is Claire, and I'll be leading this weekend." She smiled warmly. "Our goal is simple. We want every person who leaves here to understand connection a little better than when they arrived." People nodded. Claire continued. "Now, before we begin, I want to acknowledge something." She looked directly at me, then at the other guy. "We have 2 solo participants this weekend." Every head in the room turned toward us. Fantastic. Claire laughed softly. "Let's give them a warm welcome." Everyone applauded. I wanted the floor to open beneath me. The dark-haired guy looked equally uncomfortable. When the applause finally ended, Claire continued. "Normally, solo guests rotate into different workshop groups." I relaxed slightly. That sounded reasonable. But, of course there was a but. "Because we only have 2 individual attendees." She smiled again. "We've decided to pair you together for the weekend." The room actually went, Aw. I stared. The other guy stared. Neither of us spoke. Claire looked delighted. Wonderful. Why don't you introduce yourselves? The guy sighed first. I'm Martin. Wait. Martin? That almost made me laugh. My best friend's name is Martin. He blinked. Seriously? Unfortunately. A few people chuckled. Claire looked pleased. And you? I'm Asher. Excellent. She clapped once. Asher and Martin, you'll be partners during activities. Martin raised a hand. Just activities? Claire's smile became suspiciously innocent. Mostly. 10 minutes later, we were walking toward cabin 4 in complete silence. Finally, Martin spoke. This wasn't in the email. No. I thought we'd just attend workshops. So did I. He sighed. My sister signed me up. I looked over. Really? My birthday present. Ouch. She said I needed to stop hiding behind work. I laughed. My best friend dared me. Martin looked over. He dared you to spend an entire weekend pretending to be part of a couple? Pretty much. That's evil. I've been telling him that for years. For the first time, Martin smiled. It changed his whole face. He looked less intimidating, more easygoing. I'm sorry, he said. This has to be incredibly awkward. You too? Oh, definitely. We reached the cabin. It was surprisingly nice. Small fireplace, 2 bedrooms, shared living room, kitchenette. Martin looked around. Well, it could be worse. We're not sharing a bed. That would have been my limit. He laughed. Mine too. Some of the tension disappeared. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. At lunch, we learned exactly how wrong we were. Claire stood beside a whiteboard. Our first exercise is called relationship mapping. She handed every pair a worksheet. Questions filled both sides. How did you meet? Who said I love you first? What habits annoy your partner? Martin slowly looked at me. I slowly looked at him. Claire smiled. Have fun. The room immediately filled with conversation. Martin leaned closer. So? We've known each other. I checked my watch dramatically. About 43 minutes. He nodded thoughtfully. Long enough to build a meaningful relationship. I laughed. A woman across from us smiled. You two are adorable. Martin nearly choked on his water. We're not. I kicked him gently under the table. He stopped talking. The woman continued smiling. You remind me of us when we first started dating. As soon as she turned away, Martin whispered, Good save. You were about to explain everything. I was. And then we'd spend the whole weekend answering questions. He sighed. Fair point. We looked back at the worksheet. Martin picked up the pen. Fine. We improvise? We improvise. How did we meet? I thought for a moment. Coffee shop? Too boring. Bookstore? You read? I gasped dramatically. Rude. He grinned. Okay. Bookstore. He wrote it down. Who made the first move? You. I did? You seem more confident. I'm absolutely not. But strangers don't know that. He nodded. Fair. Question after question. We invented an entire fake history. A first date, favorite restaurants, inside jokes, even an imaginary argument about whose turn it was to do laundry. Somewhere in the middle of making up complete nonsense. We stopped feeling awkward. You definitely leave cabinet doors open, Martin said. I absolutely don't. You look like someone who does. And you alphabetize your spice rack. I actually do. I stared. Seriously? He looked embarrassed. I can't help it. I burst out laughing. You're impossible. So I've been told. For the first time since arriving, I forgot I was at a couples retreat. It almost felt like I was simply spending time with someone I'd known much longer. Almost. Then Claire walked over. She looked at our worksheet. Her eyebrows rose. My goodness. Martin looked nervous. What? You two filled this out remarkably quickly. I smiled. We communicate well. Claire beamed. I can see that. She tapped the paper. I have a feeling this weekend is going to surprise both of you. She walked away before either of us could respond. Martin watched her leave. I don't like how she said that. Neither do I. Outside the dining hall, the schedule board caught my eye. Saturday evening, Couples Trust Challenge. Martin stepped beside me. That sounds dangerous. I read the description underneath. One partner will be blindfolded. The other will guide them through the forest trail after sunset. I looked at Martin. He looked at me. At exactly the same time, we both said, "We're in trouble." I don't mind admitting this now. The trust challenge terrified me. Not because of the blindfold, not because it was in the woods after dark, because it forced two people to rely entirely on each other. And somehow, after less than a day, Martin and I were expected to do exactly that. The sun was beginning to disappear behind the mountains when everyone gathered near the trailhead. Small lanterns lined the path into the forest. It looked beautiful, and just creepy enough to make me second-guess every decision that had brought me here. Claire stood beside a basket full of blindfolds. The goal isn't speed, she explained. It's communication. She smiled at the couples gathered around her. One partner wears the blindfold. The other guides them safely through the trail. No touching unless absolutely necessary. Use your voice. Build trust. She looked around the group. Who wants to be blindfolded first? Martin glanced at me. I'll do it. You sure? He shrugged. Might as well. Claire handed him a navy blue blindfold. A few seconds later, he tied it securely over his eyes. Can you see anything? I asked. Not even a little. He stretched one hand out instinctively before pulling it back. So, I smiled. Guess you're stuck trusting me. He laughed. That sentence should worry me. The trail was much narrower than I'd expected. Roots crossed the ground. Branches hung low overhead. Lanterns provided enough light to see, but not much more. I walked beside Martin. Okay. Small step forward. He moved carefully. Good. Now another. I feel ridiculous. So does everyone else. Ahead of us, another couple burst into laughter as the blindfolded partner nearly walked into a bush. Martin smiled. That makes me feel slightly better. Watch your left. I can't. Right. He laughed. See? This is exactly why you're in charge. The first few minutes were awkward. Every instruction felt overly cautious. Small rock. Step over it. Good. Tree root. Take a slightly bigger step. Then, something changed. Our rhythm improved. I stopped overthinking. He stopped hesitating. We simply worked. 3 steps. Now turn a little right. This much? A little more. There. Perfect. Martin nodded. You're good at this. I expected more sarcasm. I save that for people I know. You've already accused me of leaving cabinet doors open. You still look guilty. I laughed. I've never been judged so quickly. Halfway through the trail, the unexpected happened. The weather changed. A cold gust of wind swept through the trees. Leaves rustled overhead. A second later, rain. Not heavy. Just enough to make the dirt slick. Claire called from somewhere behind us. Keep moving, everyone. The lodge isn't far. Martin tilted his head. That sounded less encouraging than she probably intended. It definitely did. We continued carefully. The ground became softer. I slowed us down. Easy. It's muddy. I trust you. The words came so naturally that I almost didn't react. Almost. Because hearing someone say that, even in a simple exercise, felt strangely significant. We rounded another bend. Then Martin's foot slipped. It happened fast. 1 second he was walking normally. The next, he lost his balance. Instinct took over. I grabbed his forearm before he hit the ground. His other hand immediately caught my shoulder. For a brief moment, neither of us moved. "You okay?" I asked. He let out a breath. "Yeah. I would have been eating dirt if you hadn't caught me." I smiled. "Guess I earned my participation certificate." He laughed quietly. Neither of us noticed we were still holding on to each other. Not until another couple walked past. The woman smiled warmly. "You two make a really good team." Martin and I let go almost instantly. "Thanks," I answered automatically. They continued down the trail. Martin rubbed the back of his neck. "We're getting better at pretending." I wasn't sure why that sentence lingered in my head. By the time we reached the lodge, both of us were damp from the rain. The fireplace in the main lounge was already lit. People gathered around it with mugs of hot chocolate and coffee. Martin disappeared for a minute before returning with 2 steaming cups. He handed one to me. "You looked cold." I accepted it. "Thanks." He shrugged. "No big deal." We found 2 empty chairs near the fire. For a while, neither of us spoke. The crackling wood filled the silence. Outside, rain tapped gently against the windows. It was peaceful. "So," Martin finally said, "what do you actually do?" I smiled. "You mean besides embarrassing myself at couples retreats?" "Professionally?" "I'm an architect." His eyebrows lifted. "Really?" "Commercial buildings mostly." "What about you?" "Physical therapist." "That explains why you caught me so fast." He grinned. "Occupational habit." The conversation became easier after that. Families, college, terrible first jobs, favorite movies, travel disasters, nothing especially important. Yet, somehow, hours disappeared. At one point, I glanced around the room. Nearly every couple had gone back to their cabins. Only a handful of people remained. Martin noticed. "We've been talking a while." "I guess we have." He smiled into his coffee. "I haven't done this in a long time." "What?" "Just," he searched for the right word. "Talked. No distractions. No phones. No pretending to be busy." His expression became thoughtful. I forgot how nice that feels. I understood exactly what he meant. As we stood to leave, Claire intercepted us near the hallway. She looked almost too pleased. "I've been observing everyone today." Martin looked suspicious. "Should we be worried?" She laughed. "No." She looked between us. Sometimes the strongest connections begin with complete strangers. Neither of us knew how to respond. Claire smiled one last time. "Tomorrow morning is the partner breakfast challenge." She walked away. Martin sighed dramatically. "I don't even want to know what that means." I unfolded the schedule, then immediately regretted it. Partner breakfast challenge. Each pair will prepare breakfast together in a shared kitchen while answering personal relationship questions. Martin groaned. "We're absolutely going to burn something." I laughed. I was more worried about the questions. He looked at me. Yeah. For the first time all weekend, the silence between us felt different. Not awkward, just thoughtful. And neither of us realized someone across the room had quietly snapped a photo of us laughing together by the fire for the retreat's slideshow on the final night. I should have known breakfast wouldn't stay simple. Nothing at this retreat ever did. The shared kitchen looked like something out of a cooking show. Long wooden counters, fresh ingredients laid out neatly, coffee already brewing. Claire stood in the middle of the room wearing an apron that read, "Love is patience." Martin leaned toward me. I'm already intimidated by her apron. I laughed. I was intimidated yesterday. She clapped her hands. Good morning, everyone. The room answered with sleepy smiles and scattered greetings. Today's challenge is all about teamwork. Of course it was. You'll prepare breakfast together while answering question cards. She lifted a stack of cards. Every 10 minutes, I'll ask you to draw another one. Martin whispered, I hate those cards already. So do I. We claimed an empty cooking station. Martin looked at the ingredients. Can you cook? I can survive. That wasn't the question. I make decent pasta. So, no? You? He smiled. My smoke alarm knows me by name. I laughed. Great. We're doomed. Somehow we settled on pancakes, eggs, and fruit. Simple. Or at least it should have been. Martin measured flour while I cracked eggs. So? Your friend really paid for this? He transferred the money the day I agreed. Martin shook his head. My sister would have just laughed and told me to pay myself. What made her sign you up? He was quiet for a second. I've spent the last 2 years working. That's it. No vacations. No dating. No weekends. Just work. He shrugged. She said I forgot how to let people in. The words hung between us. I didn't joke this time. I know that feeling. He glanced at me. You do? My life got smaller. I stirred the batter absent-mindedly. I kept telling myself I was too busy. But eventually I realized I was just comfortable being alone. Martin nodded slowly. Comfortable isn't always happy. No, it isn't. Claire appeared beside us holding a small wooden box. Time for your first question. Martin sighed dramatically. She laughed. Pick one. He reached inside, opened the card, then immediately started laughing. What? He handed it to me. What was the moment you first realized you could trust your partner? We stared at each other. Martin spoke first. Yesterday. The trail? He nodded. You didn't panic when I couldn't see. You stayed calm. I smiled. You would have done the same. I don't know. I do. For a moment, neither of us remembered we were technically making this up. Claire smiled softly. Good answer. Then she walked away. Martin blinked. We accidentally answered honestly. I realized he was right. About 30 minutes later, our pancakes actually looked edible. Martin flipped one into the air. It landed perfectly. I applauded. I take back every bad thing I said. I've practiced. Impressive. My niece loves pancakes. You have a niece? 7 years old. She thinks I'm a superhero because I can make dinosaur-shaped pancakes. I laughed. Don't ruin the illusion. I don't plan to. His face softened when he talked about her. It was nice to see. As everyone sat down to eat, an older couple joined our table. They introduced themselves as Frank and Daniel, together for 28 years. Frank smiled at us. So, how long have you boys been together? Martin looked at me. I looked at him. Before either of us answered, Daniel laughed. You don't have to be exact. Martin recovered first. Not very long. Daniel smiled knowingly. We could tell. My stomach dropped. Could tell? Frank chuckled. Not because you're doing anything wrong. You still look surprised every time the other person says something kind? Martin smiled awkwardly. I guess that's fair. Daniel looked at us warmly. Don't rush anything. Friendship is a wonderful place to begin. Neither of us corrected them. Not because we wanted to lie. It just didn't seem worth explaining anymore. After breakfast, everyone had free time before the afternoon workshop. I wandered down to the lake. The water was perfectly still. Mountains reflected across the surface. It was peaceful. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps. Martin. Mind if I join you? Not at all. He stood beside me, looking across the water. My sister keeps texting. What does she want? Updates. I laughed. My best friend, too. Martin pulled out his phone. He showed me a message. Emma, have you fallen in love yet? I burst out laughing. Oh, that's cruel. He pointed toward my pocket. Your turn. I opened my messages. There were 8 from my best friend. The newest read, please tell me you're fake, dating someone already. Martin nearly doubled over laughing. I hate him. I understand why. He lives to annoy me. Martin grinned. He sounds fun. Only because you don't know him. We stood there smiling. The silence felt comfortable, natural, not forced. Can I ask you something? Martin's voice was quieter now. Sure. Why did you stop dating? It wasn't an easy question, but somehow it didn't feel difficult to answer. I got tired. Of what? Trying to convince people to stay. He looked at me. I continued. Every connection felt temporary. Everyone wanted something newer, something easier. So eventually, I shrugged. I stopped trying. Martin was quiet. Then he nodded. I understand. You? He let out a slow breath. My last relationship ended because I never made time. Work always came first. I kept saying things would slow down. They never did. His smile was small. I don't think I realized what I'd lost until it was already over. Neither of us spoke after that. The lake remained perfectly still. Someone cleared their throat behind us. Claire. Again. She smiled apologetically. I hate interrupting. Martin laughed. I don't believe you. She ignored that. We're taking group photos before lunch. She pointed toward the main lodge. Everyone together. 20 minutes later, every couple stood together in front of the lodge. Martin naturally stepped beside me. The photographer smiled. A little closer. We moved half a step. Closer. Martin looked at me. We're going to fall off the porch. Just survive 30 seconds. The photographer grinned. Perfect. Now look at each other. Martin blinked. What? It'll look more natural. We both turned at the same time. For a second, neither of us smiled. Then Martin quietly said, You still look like someone who leaves cabinet doors open. I laughed before I could stop myself. The camera flashed. The photographer lowered it. That's the one. Neither of us realized it, but that candid photo would become everyone's favorite picture of the weekend, including ours. The afternoon workshop was called Honest Conversations. I didn't like the name the second I read it. Martin didn't either. I have a feeling this is where everything gets uncomfortable, he muttered as we took our seats. I think we passed uncomfortable yesterday. He smiled. Fair. Claire stood at the front of the room, holding another stack of cards. This exercise is different, she said. You won't be pretending today. Martin and I exchanged a look. Claire continued. The questions aren't about your relationship. They're about you. That got everyone's attention. You'll answer honestly. No right answers. No judgment. Just listen to each other. Martin picked the first card. He read it silently, then looked at me. Oh, what? He turned the card around. What's something you're afraid people misunderstand about you? He was quiet for several seconds. Finally, he spoke. People think I'm confident. I blinked. You seem confident. He smiled faintly. I've just gotten good at pretending. He rested his elbows on the table. When you're a physical therapist, patients expect you to be calm. They expect certainty. So eventually, I started acting like I always knew what I was doing. And after a while, he shrugged. Everyone assumed that was who I really was. I listened without interrupting. The truth is, I'm nervous most of the time. I overthink everything. I replay conversations for days. I smiled. I would have never guessed. I know. That's the problem. He handed me the card. My turn? He nodded. I looked at the question again, then answered. People think I don't need anyone. Martin watched me quietly. I live alone. I work long hours. I travel by myself. So everyone assumes I enjoy being independent. I laughed softly. I do. But it's different from wanting to be alone. I stared down at the table. I think I got so used to handling everything myself that I forgot how to ask for help. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then Martin said quietly, I don't think you're as hard to talk to as you believe. I looked up. You don't? He shook his head. I think you're just careful. That stayed with me. The next card was somehow even worse. When was the last time someone surprised you? Martin answered immediately. You. I laughed. What? I expected this weekend to be unbearable. So did I. But, he smiled. It's actually been fun. I couldn't help smiling back. That's because we're both equally trapped. Probably. He nudged my shoulder lightly. I'll still count it. Later that afternoon, everyone gathered outside for free time. Some couples rented kayaks. Others walked the trails. Martin pointed toward the dock. Want to? You kayak? Badly. Perfect. So do I. The lake was calm, at least for the first 10 minutes. Martin sat in the front. I paddled from the back. This is easier than I expected, he said. The second he finished speaking, he paddled on the wrong side. The kayak turned sharply. I burst out laughing. Don't laugh. You literally spun us in a circle. It was strategic. It absolutely wasn't. He laughed too. Okay. It wasn't. We drifted farther from shore. Neither of us seemed in any hurry to head back. The mountains reflected across the water. Everything was quiet. Martin rested his paddle across the kayak. Can I ask you another question? Sure. If your friend hadn't dared you, would you ever have come here? I didn't even have to think about it. No. Me neither. He looked toward the shoreline. Kind of glad we did. I was about to answer when my phone buzzed. One new message from my best friend. Have you kissed your fake boyfriend yet? I groaned. Martin looked over. What? I handed him the phone. He read it, then laughed so hard the kayak rocked. Careful. I'm trying. You'll dump us in the lake. He finally caught his breath. Your friend is relentless. I told you. He handed the phone back. You should answer. Oh? Absolutely. What do I say? Martin grinned. Tell him. He paused. That you're having a better weekend than you expected. I smiled, because it was true. So that's exactly what I sent. That evening, the retreat hosted a bonfire by the lake. Blankets, hot chocolate, music playing softly through hidden speakers. Everyone gathered in a loose circle. Claire stood beside the fire. Tonight, we're sharing stories. One by one. People talked about relationships, about mistakes, about forgiveness, about second chances. Some stories were funny, some heartbreaking. When it was Frank's turn, he looked around the circle. I met Daniel 40 years ago. Daniel smiled beside him. We weren't looking for each other. We became friends first. That friendship saved us more times than romance ever did. He looked directly at Martin and me. Never underestimate the people who make you feel peaceful. The fire crackled. Nobody spoke. For some reason, I found myself looking at Martin. He was already looking at me. Neither of us looked away immediately. After the bonfire ended, we started walking back toward our cabin. The path was quiet, only the sound of crickets and distant water. Martin shoved his hands into his pockets. You know. What? If we'd actually come here as strangers, we would have probably never talked. I frowned. Why? You would have thought I was too serious? He smiled. I would have assumed you wanted to be left alone. I laughed. You're probably right. Funny. What is? How wrong first impressions can be. I nodded slowly. They really can. We reached the cabin steps. Neither of us immediately went inside. Martin leaned against the railing. Asher? Yeah? I'm really glad my sister signed me up. I smiled. I'm really glad my best friend dared me. For a second, it felt like there was something else either of us could have said. Something bigger. Something important. Instead, we simply smiled and went inside. Neither of us noticed Claire watching from the lodge porch with a knowing smile. The retreat ended tomorrow. Neither Martin nor I were ready for it to be over. Sunday morning arrived much sooner than either of us wanted. I woke up to the smell of coffee drifting in from the cabin kitchen. For a second, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. The retreat. Martin. And the fact that somehow this weird weekend I'd never wanted to attend was almost over. I walked into the kitchen. Martin was standing at the counter, wearing a gray hoodie, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Morning, he said. You read my mind. He handed one to me. You looked like someone who needed caffeine. I always look like that before 9. He laughed. I'll remember. The words were casual, but something about I'll remember made my chest tighten. After breakfast, everyone gathered in the main hall one last time. Claire stood in front of a projector. Before we say goodbye, she smiled. I'd like to show you something. The lights dimmed. Photos from the weekend appeared on the screen. Couples hiking, cooking, laughing, the trust walk, the bonfire. People clapped whenever they recognized themselves. Then, our picture appeared. The one from in front of the lodge, Martin looking at me. Me laughing at whatever ridiculous comment he'd made. Neither of us was looking at the camera. Neither of us looked like we were pretending. The room immediately reacted. Oh, that's a good one. You two look happy. I glanced sideways. Martin was smiling awkwardly. I forgot they took that. So did I. The picture stayed on the screen for several seconds before fading into the next one. For some reason, I wished it had stayed a little longer. When the slideshow ended, Claire stepped forward. I have one final exercise. Martin quietly whispered, Please don't make us fall backwards into each other's arms. I laughed. Claire held up small envelopes. Inside each envelope is a blank card. I'd like everyone to write something they'll remember about their partner this weekend. It doesn't have to be romantic. It simply has to be honest. She handed each of us an envelope. Martin opened his. So? This feels important. It probably is. I stared at the blank card for a long moment. Then I started writing. Not quickly, not dramatically, just honestly. When everyone finished, Claire collected the cards. A few minutes later, she returned, handing each envelope back. This one is for you. Martin gave me mine. I gave him his. Neither of us opened them. Not yet. Checkout wasn't until noon. Cars slowly filled the parking lot. People hugged goodbye. Phone numbers were exchanged. Promises were made to stay in touch. Martin loaded his duffel bag into his SUV. I did the same with mine. The entire weekend suddenly felt short. Too short. Martin walked over. So, I guess this is it? I guess. There was an awkward silence, not uncomfortable, just unfinished. Finally, he spoke. I've had a really good time, Asher. I have too. I didn't expect that. Neither did I. He smiled. You know, we never actually exchanged numbers. I blinked. We didn't. He pulled out his phone. Seems like an oversight. I laughed. I'd say so. 30 seconds later, my phone buzzed. Martin, now you can't disappear. I smiled at the screen. I wasn't planning to. He looked relieved. Just slightly, but enough that I noticed. Someone called my name. Asher. I turned. Claire was jogging toward us. She stopped with a grin. I almost forgot. She handed us each a small framed photograph. The same candid picture from yesterday. The one where I was laughing. The one where Martin was looking at me. Our photographer thought you'd want these. Martin stared at his picture. It's actually really nice. Claire nodded. It captures something real. She smiled one last time. Take care of each other. Then she walked away. Neither of us said anything. I climbed into my car. Martin stood beside his. He raised a hand. Drive safe. You too. We both got in, started our engines, pulled out of the parking lot. I watched his SUV disappear in my rearview mirror. And for reasons I couldn't explain, the drive home felt strangely quiet. By the time I reached my apartment, there were already 12 messages from my best friend. The newest one simply read, "So?" I laughed, then called him. He answered before the first ring finished. Well? You were right. I usually am. I hate admitting that. So? I smiled without realizing it. It wasn't a disaster. Oh? It was actually, I searched for the right word, kind of amazing. There was a long pause. Then Martin, no. My best friend laughed. I knew it. So, tell me everything. I did. Almost everything. I told him about the workshops, the trust walk, the pancakes, the kayaking, the bonfire, the fake relationship, the slideshow. I realized something halfway through. I hadn't stopped smiling once. Finally, my friend interrupted. So, are you going to see him again? I opened my mouth, then closed it, because the truth was, I didn't know. And somehow, that answer bothered me more than I expected. Just then, my phone buzzed, a new text from Martin. I just got home. This house feels a lot quieter than it did yesterday. I stared at the message for several seconds, then slowly smiled. Maybe the retreat wasn't actually over yet. I told myself I wasn't going to overthink Martin's text. That lasted about 12 seconds. I looked at it again. I just got home. This house feels a lot quieter than it did yesterday. There were probably a dozen perfectly reasonable ways to respond. Instead, I stared at my phone for 5 full minutes. Finally, I typed, "Mine too." I didn't expect to miss talking to someone after only one weekend. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His reply came less than a minute later. I was hoping you'd say that. I smiled. Again, it was becoming a problem. The next few days settled back into normal life, or at least they tried to. Work was exactly the same. Meetings, blueprints, emails, coffee. But every now and then my phone would buzz. Martin patient canceled. I finally get to eat lunch before 4 p.m. Or, my niece informed me my dinosaur pancakes have lost their magic. Or, I alphabetized my spice rack again. I figured you'd want proof. He even attached a picture. I laughed so hard one of my coworkers looked over. You okay? Yeah. What happened? I locked my phone. Nothing. But it wasn't nothing. Somehow, talking to Martin had quietly become the best part of my day. A week after the retreat, my best friend showed up at my apartment carrying pizza. He didn't even knock. Typical. The second he walked inside, he narrowed his eyes. You're smiling. I smile. Not like this. I have no idea what you're talking about. He tossed the pizza onto the kitchen counter. Asher. What? You've checked your phone 6 times in the last 5 minutes. I was expecting an email. From Martin? I froze. He pointed dramatically. I knew it. I never said? You didn't have to. He folded his arms with a look of complete satisfaction. So, how many texts today? I sighed. 23. His jaw dropped. 23? We've both had slow work days. He started laughing so hard he had to lean against the counter. My dare worked. I hate you. You love me. I tolerate you. Barely. He opened the pizza box. So, when are you seeing him again? I picked up a slice. We haven't talked about it. Liar. I looked away. He noticed immediately. You already talked about it? We might. When? This weekend. His grin became enormous. I deserve credit for this. You deserve absolutely nothing. I created destiny. You created chaos. Same thing. Friday evening arrived. Martin and I agreed to meet at a small bookstore downtown. It felt strangely familiar, even though we'd never actually met there. The fake story we'd invented at the retreat suddenly made me laugh. When I walked inside, he was already browsing the travel section. He looked up, smiled. There you are. Sorry. I got stuck in traffic. I've only been here 5 minutes. Still. The way he said it, like he'd genuinely been waiting for me, it made something warm settle quietly in my chest. We wandered around the bookstore for nearly an hour. Neither of us bought anything. We just talked about books we'd never finished, trips we wanted to take, movies we'd somehow both loved despite terrible reviews. Eventually, Martin picked up a cookbook. I could learn one recipe. You already make dinosaur pancakes. That's not exactly fine dining. It depends who you ask. My niece would probably agree with you. I smiled. I definitely would. He looked at me for a second longer than necessary, then quietly put the book back. Afterward, we found a small cafe nearby. The waitress walked over. Table for 2? Martin answered before I could. Yeah. She smiled. Right this way. As she led us across the room, she glanced back. You two are cute together. Martin almost walked into a chair. I nearly laughed into my sleeve. Once we sat down, he rubbed the back of his neck. Does this keep happening to us? It appears so. He smiled. We're getting convincing. Something about that sentence felt different now. Neither of us joked afterward. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into an evening walk. By the time we reached the riverfront, the city lights reflected across the water. People wandered past holding hands. Couples sat on benches. The air was cool enough that neither of us minded walking slowly. Martin broke the silence. Can I admit something? Always. When Claire paired us together, I was disappointed. I looked over. You were? I wanted the weekend to end quickly. So I figured having a stranger as my partner would make it easier. He laughed softly. I was completely wrong. I smiled. So was I. He stopped walking. So, I'm really glad it was you. The words settled between us. Simple, honest. I looked at him. I'm glad it was you too. For several seconds. Neither of us moved. The city seemed quieter somehow. Finally, Martin laughed softly. We're terrible at saying goodbye. I've noticed. So, coffee again next week? I smiled. I'd like that. As we started walking again, our hands brushed for just a second. Neither of us pulled away immediately. Neither of us reached any farther either. We simply kept walking. And for the first time, it no longer felt like two strangers who'd met at a retreat. It felt like the beginning of something neither of us wanted to rush. 3 months later, Martin still texted me every morning. It had started accidentally. One day he'd sent, "Good luck with your meeting." The next morning I'd answered with, "Hope your patients behave today." Then somehow, it became our routine. Not because we planned it, because we missed it whenever it didn't happen. Life settled into something comfortable. We saw each other almost every weekend. Sometimes we'd grab dinner. Sometimes we'd spend hours wandering through bookstores or farmers markets. Sometimes we'd do absolutely nothing except sit on my apartment balcony talking while the sun went down. There was never any pressure, no pretending, no expectations, just time. Looking back, I understood what Frank had meant at the retreat. Friendship really was the best place to begin. One Saturday afternoon, Martin showed up carrying 2 grocery bags. "You cooking?" I asked. He looked offended. "I'm attempting to." I laughed. "Should I call the fire department now?" "You have no faith in me." "You've earned that." He walked into my kitchen. "I'm making dinner." "Using the cookbook?" He smiled proudly. "I've graduated from dinosaur pancakes." "We'll see." An hour later, the food was surprisingly good. I stared at my plate. I'm honestly impressed. "I told you. I expected smoke." "I've grown." I nodded dramatically. "You really have." He laughed. Then his smile slowly faded into something quieter. "Asher?" "Yeah?" "I've been thinking." That usually meant something important. "I don't compare people to my ex anymore." I looked at him. I didn't even realize I was doing it until recently. He rested his fork on the table. "I think?" He smiled nervously. "Meeting you helped me stop looking backward." I didn't answer immediately, because I knew exactly what he meant. A week later, my best friend called. So, how's your fake boyfriend?" I laughed. "He's good." There was silence. Then, "You called him your boyfriend." I froze. You literally just did." I rubbed a hand across my face. "I didn't mean..." "Oh, you absolutely meant it." He sounded unbearably pleased. "So, when are you finally telling him?" "Telling him what?" "That you're obviously in love with him?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because for the first time, I couldn't honestly deny it. The answer came sooner than I expected. It happened on an ordinary Thursday evening. Martin invited me over after work. "No reason," he texted. "I just felt like seeing you." When I arrived, we ordered takeout, watched half a movie, talked over most of it. Nothing unusual. Around 10 o'clock, we stepped onto his balcony. The city lights stretched across the skyline. Cool air drifted between the buildings. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, Martin broke the silence. "Do you remember the first question we answered at breakfast?" I thought for a moment. "When did you realize you could trust your partner?" He nodded. "I've been thinking about that." "So have I." He smiled softly. I don't think my answer was completely honest. "No?" "No. When I slipped on that trail, I trusted you before you caught me." I looked at him. "I trusted you because..." He laughed quietly. "You never once made me feel like I had to pretend." The words hit me harder than he probably realized. I looked down at the city, then back at him. I have something to admit to. He waited. I kept telling everyone the best part of the retreat was how ridiculous it was. I smiled, but that wasn't true. What was? Meeting you. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then Martin took one careful step closer. Asher, if this is completely one-sided, it's not. The answer came out before he'd even finished. He smiled. Relief washed across his face. I was hoping it wasn't. So was I. We both laughed, mostly because neither of us knew what else to do. Martin looked at me. Can I ask you one last question? Always. Would you like to go on an actual first date? I couldn't help smiling. I thought we'd already had one. He laughed. Fair point. So, an official second first date? I nodded. I'd love that. Instead of rushing anything, he simply reached for my hand. Our fingers intertwined naturally. No dramatic moment. No audience. No perfect soundtrack. Just two people who'd started as complete strangers at the most awkward weekend imaginable, finally admitting what had quietly been growing between them. 6 months later, my best friend insisted on hosting dinner. The second Martin and I walked through the door. He looked between us, then grinned. So, I have one question. Martin laughed. Go ahead. He pointed at both of us. Was the dare worth it? I looked at Martin. Martin looked at me. We both smiled, then answered together. The best dare we've ever accepted. My best friend raised his glass. I knew it. Martin leaned closer and whispered, I'm still never thanking him. I laughed. Me neither. Outside, the evening sun slipped below the horizon. Inside, surrounded by laughter, friends, and the quiet comfort we'd built together, I realized something. I'd driven to that couple's retreat, convinced I was going alone. Instead, I found the person I wanted beside me long after the weekend had ended, and looking back now, I'd accept that dare all over again.